And with that, hi everybody, this is MCE Graduate Assistant Carson, and today I'm interviewing Volha Isakava to highlight our upcoming event with her next week. Volha, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited about this event. And I'm just going to turn it over to you this morning to briefly discuss what this panel is going to be about and why it's important to discuss it.
Thank you so much for having me, Carson, and thank you to the Hope Amison and Museum of Culture and Environment and CWU for co-organizing this event with Department of World Languages and Cultures. So I think what is really important about this event is that undoubtedly many people have seen Belarus in the news lately as the country where one of the largest and most enduring popular protests, pro-democracy popular protests have been happening globally. But I'm sure many of you are wondering, where is Belarus? What is this country all about? And so I hope that this panel will shed light on the importance of Belarus on the global stage, and most importantly, of the importance of the protests that are happening in Belarus for our understanding of that country and for our understanding of the popular uprising for democracy. So just to give you a little bit of context, Belarus is a small Central European nation. It has about 10 million people. It is neighboring Russia and Poland and is one of the so-called post-Soviet states, which means it used to be a Soviet republic. Belarus has become independent like all the other Soviet republics in the wake of the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991. And in 1994, it has elected Alexander Lukashenko as one of its first democratically elected leaders. And since 1994, he hasn't let go of power, and that earned Belarus the sort of bad moniker of the last dictatorship in Europe. Which something that has been labeled to Belarus for a very long time because it's been under the oppressive dictatorship of Lukashenko, with all the systematic dismantling of individuals' rights and civil liberties, constitutional rights of citizens that you could expect from such totalitarian development. Belarus is one of the very few European countries that still has political prisoners, doesn't have any representative democracy except on paper. And so the protest that we are going to be talking about happened in the wake of another fraudulent election. And I say another fraudulent election because you can imagine that since 1994 to 2020, there has been many parliamentary fraudulent elections, presidential fraudulent elections. And so this August 9, to great surprise of the powers in Belarus, for the dictator himself, people have started marching on the streets demanding change. And that popular protest has drawn millions, hundreds of thousands of people that go out. There used to be daily demonstrations, but now there are weekly demonstrations. Every weekend, the Belarusian cities are flooded with protesters and are, who are peacefully protesting for justice, for new elections, and for the opposition candidate who, in fraudulent terms, right, lost the election, but everybody knows that she actually won the election. And so one of the slogans of the movement is 97 versus 3%, because in formal polling and with the independent media and observations, it seems that the current incumbent, the dictator Alexander Lukashenko, has only harnessed 3%. So he is now being called all over the internet, Sasha 3%, which is kind of gives you a sense that people, even though they've been met with extraordinary police brutality and difficulty marching since August 9, still haven't lost their sense of humor and their sense of hope, despite all the horrible things that have happened. Mm-hmm. And so this is the kind of really quick context for Belarus. The August 9 elections were just one of the series of multi-year fraudulent elections that also sparked protests, failed protests. And this is something that is really hard to contend to when it comes to politics and when it comes to, the just fight for democratic values, fight for civil liberties, is that before Belarus reached this unprecedented popular protest that kind of sent shock waves around the world, and the one that finally appeared in Western media like it mattered, it only after many other protests that also put many people in jail, hundreds of people in jail, that also, ruined lives of thousands of people who marched on the streets. They were all in vain, so seemingly, and that is one of the hopeless kind of dimensions of protest, is that how many times do people have to sacrifice and go out on the street to make a meaningful change? And so it seems like finally in 2020, all those activists who fought in 1998 and in 2000 and in 2010, and people who made, a tent resistant city and were brutally, kind of squashed by the authorities just 6 years ago or so. All of these people can see that power could also belong to the people, finally, in 2020. And so since August 9, the Belarusians have been marching, and that's what we're going to talk about, what kind of strategies Belarusian protests use, how important is the role of female leaders in the protest opposition movement. If you might know or not, or maybe not, is that the person who ran against Lukashenko was the wife of the imprisoned political activist. And she only ran because Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, she published an op-ed in New York Times, which I strongly advise everyone to go and read. And she says, I was happy to be a housewife. And then my husband got arrested. And it was so unjust, I couldn't just stand by and sit by. So she became the leader of the opposition movement, together with two other women, one of whose husband was also arrested, which pushed her into the activism. And so this coalition of three strong women who, were not perceived by Lukashenko government as a threat, because I'm like, who's going to vote for a woman in Belarus, given the fact that, the elections are already fraudulent, So they just didn't take them seriously, those three women, but they united. And according to international observers and according to other kind of independent polling and independent vote counting, they actually won. And so people in Minsk march not only against the dictatorship, march not only for democratic and better Belarus, for the power to the people and the voice of the people, but they also march for women who were brave enough, despite all the intimidation, to lead that fight. And by intimidation, I mean, the authorities threatened children, the authorities threatened parents. They actually factually made the opposition candidate flee to Lithuania for the fear of her life. And the other opposition candidate, through such a fight, she actually tore her passport in front of her tormentors, threw it out, and they took her to jail instead of taking her to Ukraine. So this was pretty dramatic.
So it's really important to be discussing this, especially in this day and age. Mm-hmm. We're excited to have this event, and it's just a reminder to everyone watching that Volha's full panel discussion is going to be taking place next Friday, October 23rd at 12 p.m. Pacific time. It is a virtual and free event, and we encourage everyone who's interested to come watch. And thanks again, Volha, for doing this. We're really excited to have you next week.
Yeah, happy to contribute and spread good word about Belarus and its amazing people.
Very much so. Thank you very, very much, and we'll see you next week.
All right.